Hello and welcome to Inside Marvel from ABC News Digital. I'm your host, Walt Hickey. Today we've got a huge show. We're talking about Captain America 25, the exciting conclusion of that story, and also Secret Empire number 8. We're getting to the final part, people. I am joined today by ABC News' Mike Rothman.
Hello.
From Marvel Comics, we've got Alanna Smith. She's editing this book. And then out in LA, we've got Meg Downey. She's a Captain America historian. You can read her all over the internet, and we are just going to dive in on these characters, just three extremely consequential issues. Mike, can you take us through Captain America 25?
I sure can. The good guys are coming back a little bit.
Yeah.
Yay! So, all right, we started off with Tony Stark having a revelation, aside from having a birthday cake that he can't eat because he's essentially an artificial intelligence.
He's a techno.
He's a robot, yeah. So he noticed that the cube fragment can alter reality a little bit. Not as much as the cube combined into one full cube. But he noticed something with Cap, and that's how Cap survived. So that's
mild wishes.
Yes, you can get mild wishes. I wish I could use that. That'd be great. So that's the first thing. That will head us into Secret Empire 8.
Spoilers ahead, by the way. We're about to get into some pretty heady territory.
Yes, don't attack me. Big spoilers. There's also...
So Cap makes 2 attacks.
Cap makes 2 attacks on New Tion.
Mm-hmm. Where the mutants are hanging out. Where the mutants are all hanging out?
Yes. Where the mutants are all hanging out or being held captive or whatever you want to call it. There's also Wakanda. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Black Panther wasn't very smart not to side with the Avengers on this one. And then finally we end with a huge reveal.
Huge reveal. Last chance. No bad for spoilers if you don't want to hear it.
Sign off now. Sign off now. Bucky's alive, and he's siding with Namor, who suddenly redeemed himself in such a nice way, because I hate Namor throughout this series, but I like him now.
He is arrogant, but makes a couple valid points. Meg, I want to bring you in on this, because I know that you're a Bucky fan, and here's just a character that's so steeped in the Captain America lore. Where's he been? What's he been up to? What's this return about?
Oh, man. So Bucky's spent the last year really busy, and he's been with kind of the Thunderbolts in a new version of the Thunderbolts. So this is not the Thunderbolts that, we're familiar with. He took the sentient cosmic cube, he took Kovac, and kind of hoarded her away, and used the Thunderbolts as kind of like her own personal bodyguard system. But then, things kind of went a little south because Kovac has all this power, but she's also 8? And so she doesn't quite understand how to use it. And so that story kind of ended with her, trying to fix things. And her version of fixing things, as we've kind of seen with Secret Empire, is not that great. And so Bucky ended up kind of reliving his own near-death experience very pointedly. And he got sent on a rocket and kind of shot into space, or kind of the stratosphere, and we learn now that he landed in the ocean and Namor found him. So Bucky's been busy. I should say.
He's had a rough year.
He still has those washboard abs, though.
Yeah, he does. He does.
He's been working. He's been pumping before each take.
Yes.
So, Alanna, can you tell us a little bit about this character, Kovac? Because this will come back in a little bit. So before we get too deep into either Cap 25 or... it really goes to the setup of this. Now, you've been shepherding this character in a lot of ways through the past couple of years. You've been working on all our books. What's the story there? Because a lot of that goes into the background of why Captain America went Hydra.
Yeah, so Kovac was originally created by S.H.I.E.L.D. from a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. fragments and became sentient. And the problem is they had a sentient cosmic cube who was a baby, basically, and didn't really know what was going on. So they used her to create a super prison called Pleasant Hill, where she was rewriting the realities of supervillains and reforming them and having them live more nice lives.
That sounds great, and no consequences.
No
can result
consequences.
from it.
No.
Never goes
anyway,
wrong.
go on.
So that all goes wrong.
Cool. Okay. I forgot that
very
part.
quickly, thanks to our buddy Zemo, and Bucky manages to get her out of there and teams up with a few of the Thunderbolts to keep her out of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s hands because he sees her as a weapon that could be used and abused by other people the same way he has been.
Correctly.
That
is a correct assessment of Kovac.
So he tries to keep her safe. It goes wrong again because, again, Zemo shows up. And so Zemo gets the cube back for Steve because at this point he knows that Kovac rewrote Steve to be a Hydra agent at the request of the Red Skull, who she trusted mistakenly. And
he was
saw
Father of the Year, right?
Yeah. Out of the Year.
Yeah. So she basically remembered him from when she was a cube and went to meet up with him. And he was like, hey, you know, it would be really cool is if we did this. And, you know, she doesn't know any better. So.
Right. So again, being with unlimited power, but again, some slight naivete, so to speak.
Yes.
I want to bust out a little bit, and if anybody can kind of chime in here, just because Bucky's a very fascinating character. This is not the first time that he has emerged late in the Act 3 of the story,
Yes.
Especially a Steve one, you know. So I want to talk a little bit about this character, who he is in the books. A lot of folks are known from the movies, if not from the books. Who is Bucky Barnes, and what is his new presence going to bring to this arc?
Well, he's kind of been there the whole time, chilling with Namor, like in the background of a lot of scenes. So it should be fun for people to go back and reread and be like, oh, there he is. That's why that random advisor was being so sassy. Like, that's what he was doing there. But, you know, Bucky is integral to this story because he knows Captain America better than anyone, and he also knows Kovac better than anyone because he's basically been raising her for the past however many months. So he's kind of the piece that the Resistance here has been missing, like the piece that understands everything about how all this works and knows the players intimately and will be able to, you know, make use of that to help fight back. So
yeah, Meg, I want to jump out to you out in LA and the ABC News headquarters of LA. I want to ask about essentially how does Bucky fold into the Captain America family? If you kind of look, like, there's a lot of, he has proteges. He's a guy who inspires proteges. What can you tell me about how Bucky kind of counts in that crowd?
Sure. I think to understand Bucky, you really kind of have to look back at Steve's history too. In that Captain America stories, one of the biggest reoccurring themes in his stories is this idea of identity. And so Steve is a character just kind of by virtue of who he is very easily defined by what he isn't, rather than what he actually is. And so typically, historically, when that happens, you have, you know, kind of like really terrible villains. Like you have like the Cap from the 50s, who was part of the original Secret Empire kind of prologue and whatnot. You get this like corrupted Captain America. And then you have Bucky, who back, you know, kind of back during the early 2000s when you had, you know, his return and his, you know, ascension as the Winter Soldier. And then you have him taking over as Cap. A lot of the legwork that he put into the story not only defined himself, but also by virtue of just what Bucky was, defined Steve. And so he kind of is this very complimentary and very unusual piece of the Cap legacy because he does a lot of the work that typically like very villainous characters would do, but he did it in a very positive light. And so you have a lot of really interesting kind of interplay with the duality between those two characters because they both kind of fit together and define one another in like an addition by subtraction kind of way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think like I work with Tom Brevoort, who, you know, did the original Winter Soldier story, and the way we've talked about it is like we see old covers come up where Bucky is all cute and happy and like wielding 2 Tommy guns, like, and just mowing people down. And basically, when they went to work on the Winter Soldier story, they saw that and they were like, you know, he's kind of always been that a little bit, that guy who gets his hands dirty so Cap can still be the symbol, despite the fact that, you know, he's a very cute, bubbly little kid. Like, if you actually look at what he's doing,
that's funny.
It's pretty violent and dark. So they leaned full into that in the lead up to the reveal that he was coming back as the Winter Soldier. So since then, I think he's kind of maintained the role of, you know, he is a hero, but he also has that darkness in him that he's willing to go a little further than Steve will, if only to keep Steve from having to do it. So.
So and now I want to bring in go into Secret Empire number 8 again. So we're talking about proteges, we're talking about legacies. We have to start talking about Sam. We have to start talking about the Falcon and how he's kind of bringing up the mantle of Captain America. This was kind of a really stand up and cheer book. Mike, I know that you really liked a lot of those. We got preview panels 2 weeks ago, and they were a real great moment. What's going on again as this character kind of inspires folks from all the different parts of the world?
Well, he's been very hesitant to this point, right? I mean, the Avengers came up to him. They wanted him to kind of help them out. I mean, I guess the mantle of Captain America is more than just a person. Obviously, Steve Rogers is the epitome of it, and what in the past what he's been. But obviously, this series undoes all of that, right? And so Sam Wilson, after a tragic last issue. Comes out of nowhere and is like, I'm here, let's do this. And it's really interesting that we talked about Bucky a second ago too, but proteges and identity, the the triple of them is going to be very interesting to see moving forward, like how they relate and how they interact, because it seems like Sam and Bucky are taking over for the inspiration that Steve usually has, which is really interesting and cool to see them like picking him up and lifting him up, hopefully, as we move forward.
Yeah, and it's the kind of situation where, like, Cap can't be Cap right now, so someone else has to.
Could you walk us through this book, actually, real quick?
Yeah. So, Secret Empire 8, we see the heroes finally get a message beyond the Planetary Defense Shield and the Dark Force dimension, which up till this point they haven't really been able to communicate with. The message is Sam rallying the troops and being like, we're going to take a shot, like, with this cosmic cube fragment. If you have any crazy ideas, do them now, because with the cube fragment they're more likely to succeed.
So they got a little luck on their side.
Yeah. So it's like, this is where all the, like, Goldberg machines of stuff that could cascade together. He's like, start that now. Like, this is the run that we're doing. And so
I'm going to stop right here real quick, because what I love is they all fail.
Yeah.
All of them fail on the first try. And Sam gets shot down.
Yes.
Dark Force Dimension attempt doesn't go good. They can't break into space. They actually just, slam their space station into the shield.
Yeah.
Everything fails.
But
Then what happens?
Then we see Maria Hill on intel from Deadpool manages to track down Blackout, who put up the Dark Force Dimension in Secret Empire 0, I believe. And she assassinates Blackout, which is sad because Blackout didn't really know what he was doing. He's still Pleasant Hillified from Kovac. And the Planetary Defense Shield comes down because Quasar finally regains consciousness. And this time she is able to take down the shield fully, and Captain Marvel flies in, takes out the Chitauri eggs, and the fleet is gone. So now they don't have the invasion. All the heroes are free to kind of converge and come together, and Cap's been able to hold his control over everything because so many heroes are out of play, especially the really powerful heroes who were up in space defending against the invasion. So now he's got a big war to fight.
The thing that I love about this issue, and Meg, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that the big theme of it is like Sam is reminding us why we got into this in the first place, and that just seems like such an important part of Cap's role in this universe.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I think Cap is a focal point for the Marvel Universe. Even when, like, regardless of who is taking up the mantle, it's kind of always going to fall on their shoulders that they have to be the central point for the universe to kind of look at and be like, okay, we're going to fall into step with this person. And so I think that's something that Sam, specifically kind of leading up to this point, has been kind of hesitant. I mean, necessarily so. When you're falling, into that role, it's not an easy thing to do. It's a really daunting task, and it's daunting just kind of in and of itself, and then it gets even worse when you have the entire world and beyond in complete disarray and crisis. And so I think Sam has always kind of been that guy who wants to be kind of on the street level, like he wants to just be the sort of everyman hero, whereas the Cap mantle kind of necessitates that he be a symbol. And I don't know, it's not that Sam can't shoulder that weight, it's that he doesn't really see himself as someone who really wants to.
He doesn't look comfortable. Again, so the panel that you're looking at right now is Sam, like, again, trying to outrun like two F-35s. And he does not look like a comfortable man in this particular role.
No, not at all.
Which, by the way, those of you watching, feel free to shoot in questions. We will try to get to some of those if we get a shot later on. But Meg, sorry, please continue. He doesn't seem very comfortable in this role, but I think that's one reason that it's so admirable that he's hopping into it,
Right, absolutely. I think, it defines him really, really well. He has a line in this issue, I'm paraphrasing it, but he's, kind of before he steps into his big speech mode, he actually, like, caveats himself and says that, like, I'm not, like, when I started this, I didn't like giving speeches or what have you, which is kind of, like, a part of the Cap, repartee is being able to kind of, come up with things off the top of his head, which is not something that Sam has ever really liked to do. But I also think that Sam, in that way, is the sort of guy who, much like Bucky, I think Sam and Bucky share a lot in that they're both willing to be the person they need to be in the moment, even if they're not, the sort of person that they see themselves as. Like, they're willing to step into that role. And I think that's what kind of makes them both such good counterpoints for Steve, is that I think anyone else in the Marvel Universe, really, speaking generally, if they were to step into, like, to Steve's role, they would kind of be crushed by the weight of it. But both Sam and Bucky can kind of shoulder it and understand that, you know, like the myth is one thing, the man is one thing, and they need to kind of find themselves on that spectrum and, you know, do service to both.
Alanna, can you tell us, we were talking a little bit beforehand about, like before the show, about how this book gets made. You are just sending number 10 to the printers.
Yes.
Again, so this is number 8, number 9's out in about 2 weeks. This seems like a grueling process. Can you tell us a little bit about how these things get made?
A little grueling.
Well, before we sent 10, we had only just the week before sent 9, and I think maybe a week or 2 weeks before that we'd sent 8. So we're shipping these very fast.
Yeah.
It's very tiring on an editorial side because they're all very big issues and a lot is happening and there are a lot of characters to keep track of. So, you know, it's a very rewarding process when it all comes together and you're able to get the book out. But with any event like this, there's a billion moving pieces and a billion, you know, pages coming in and pages that have to go out to different people and script that comes in and script that has to go to this person but not this person. It's just a whole... So it's pretty tiring. I'm looking forward to taking a nap when it's all done.
You're in the final stretch. You're
Yes,
so close.
I am.
You're
I'm
so close.
So after we put out the 10, next week we're putting out the Omega, which will wrap up a lot of the loose threads remaining from 10 and kind of set up the Marvel Universe to come.
So again, behind the scenes, you're looking at where does this kind of leave your world. You're looking at where does this set up the Marvel Universe or moving forward. What are some of the forces that we should be looking at in these next couple issues, or even in this one, that are just like, oh, this is an interesting thread? One thing that was exciting, like we saw Kingpin come as
yes,
like,
you'll see a lot more from Kingpin.
So what should we be keeping an eye on in this issue that might come up a little bit later on?
There's Bucky plans. I can't talk about them yet.
Bring them back, all right.
But certainly keep an eye on Bucky. Let me think. So...
Usually I leave this to Rothman to try to squeeze
Yeah,
enough
no, I'm trying to go through without...
She's been through a lot. She's at the home stretch.
You know, but I think you'll see possibly a revised status quo from Carol after this because she just bombed her space station, so she's gonna have to deal with that. Like it's not there anymore.
It seems like it's really kind of shook a lot of people to their core.
Yes.
Like this is a book that like Captain America used everything that they had built against them, and that is going to leave a lasting psychological impact.
And I think
really what I'm more interested in.
Yeah, I think Sam also, despite the fact that he's able to rally in this issue, he was horribly betrayed by his best friend, and he didn't see it coming at all. He's, from the moment they get out of Pleasant Hill, Steve is playing him, and he doesn't catch on to it because why would you? It's Steve Rogers. So there's a lot of moments through that Sam run where he goes to Steve for help and advice, and Steve advises him, and every single time he's playing him wrong and putting Sam in a position where he's going to capitulate the shield and walk away. That was completely orchestrated by Steve. Yeah. So I think coming out of this, you'll see a Sam who is shaken, and despite the fact that he's managed to rally and for the final push, I think the aftermath of this is going to be pretty traumatic for him, and he's going to have to rebuild.
Extremely justifiable trust issues. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned Carol, and that I feel like she's kind of the opposite, right? We had Quasar was down and out, and she was begging her get up. She during I know the one thing I noticed during Sam's speech, she had tears in her eyes. Obviously, this is a person who going through the events of Civil War II was her identity was completely changed. So it seems like maybe she's on the opposite side of Sam having, some trust issues. That's fine.
No one's going to trust anyone ever.
No, never again. But I feel like she's going in the right direction. She's starting to believe again in all of this after a really rough year for her.
Yeah, and if not necessarily herself, her people. I think she's seen how much her people rallied to keep that space station in the air and to keep the Earth defended. Even though the shield was up, it could have come down at any moment. They didn't know what was going on. So she's seen all these brave people fighting around her and fighting beside her, and I think that's going to affect her going forward. And also we'll have the new Patriot who we introduced in this event. We'll be showing up.
Could you tell us a little bit about the Patriot, if you're familiar with him? Again, character, a bit long-standing. He's very tied to the original Captain America story in a lot of ways. And he just seems like another person in the orbit of Cap. Do you know his story?
It kind of depends. There's been several people who have kind of taken over that mantle time and time again, and I think that one of the things you have to understand about Captain America and the characters that kind of fit around him is that they all kind of jigsaw together in a really kind of interesting way, in that they're all fundamentally similar. They're all fundamentally kind of the same character who wants to do kind of the same sort of thing. But when you take away Steve from like that sort of linchpin aspect, you sort of get this idea that these characters are all very different in the sense that they all are kind of motivated by very different things. And I think Patriot is a character who falls into that, where it's very easy to kind of like conflate him with other kind of Cap mythos characters, but I think when you stand him up on his own, he becomes very interesting.
Yeah, they all have like similar aspirations, similar goals, but they're all like broken in a slightly different way, and that's what makes these really cool.
Right, exactly.
We talked in big terms as far as the characters moving forward in the Marvel Universe. I'm interested, I mean, not moving forward with the issues yet, because we get to that at the end usually, but...
we'll get to that soon, actually. So just before you get into that, I do want to disclose ABC News, Marvel Entertainment, and my employer, 538, are all underneath the Walt Disney Company. So just in the interest of full disclosure. Sorry, Mike, go on.
No, I was going to say, we talked about how things are finally going the way of the good guys here, but also Sam was using a cube fragment, and so he was shot down. It looks bleak. I mean, the shield was still up. Everything was going wrong. I wonder, they really feel like they have the upper hand. It's momentum almost. Yeah. I wonder what we can see from that, being that they know this thing, it doesn't work all the time. It's not a full cube. They can't rewrite history, but they can kind of get like little genie wishes when they try.
Yeah, I mean, you'll definitely see more of it.
Speaking of the full cube and big genie wishes,
I
want to talk about how this issue ends. Issue 8 ends with, you mentioned earlier, Kovac. So can you tell us a little bit about Kovac and Gil? Tell us a little bit about this dream cap sequence that in so many ways we're seeing.
So this is the final reveal of what has been going on there, more or less, is that, you know, I don't know how much detail I can really get into about what we've seen here, but it's Kovac. Like, basically, our Steve is with Kovac in this, you know, non-space that they're in. And, you know, Kovac is someone who is also familiar with Steve because he protected her during standoff. And
they have a good relationship.
Yes. So, you know, she's in a very dark place herself. Like, she got shattered. She was rejected by Bucky when she tried to be like, hey, you want to be Hydra? And he was like, I'd rather not, thank you. So that relationship kind of ended in flames. So
it's a hard pass.
So she's in a space.
Swiping left.
She's in a space on her own where she, you know, even if she could overcome like the Red Skull's indoctrination, she's not in an emotional place where she can do that on her own. She doesn't know, you know, she doesn't fully understand what she did, and she doesn't know why she's alone at this point and shattered and unable to regain her strength.
Where's she going to find an inspirational figure when only
Steve Rogers is there? I wish she had more people there.
Can I throw a question here?
Of course.
Old Rothman is back. I'm going to do the full court press here.
Oh, no.
Oh, he's here to cause mayhem. So we finally know like what this space is, right?
Yes.
My question is, and there's no way you could fully answer this, maybe after the show.
Hey, who knows?
So if they do succeed somehow in getting out of the space or correcting things, so many questions. Does like Cap just forget what happened? Will the two personalities merge? Will there be? He comes out. He's like, "Hey guys, I'm back. What's going on?" And they're like, "We hate you so much right now."
Well, that would be some interesting character development, Mike.
I will say, I think a lot of people have been saying of this story that, you know, the second Kovac returns, that everything's going to be rewritten, all the damage is going to be erased, like all the consequences are gone. That's not the case. Okay. Like there's still going to be long-lasting ramifications of this and big problems that are left to solve. And, you know, even if Steve came out of this 100% fine, like the world is still going to remember what happened.
Yeah.
So, without getting into too much detail about how we resolved the whole cube thing, I can't. You wouldn't even have to read issue 2. I worked so hard on it. But yes, so there are definitely going to be lasting effects of this event, regardless of what Kovac or Steve do.
So Meg, one last time out to you. Where does this the story is kind of, we're reaching its peak. We're reaching its and so we've seen the character of Steve Rogers get questioned and interrogated and all that and boiled down. And Nick Spencer told us that he's not writing a story about stories on this, but let's tell a story about this story. Where do you kind of think this kind of stacks up? Like, what stories come to mind when you're reading Secret Empire at this point?
I mean, obviously you have to, and this is a really low-hanging fruit, and I apologize, but you have to kind of, like, refer back to the original Secret Empire when this is going on. But also, like I said before, kind of earlier, there's a reoccurring theme in these sort of very subtle, almost Cap stories that you see kind of replayed. If you look back at sort of like the 2002, 2003, the Marvel Knights run of Captain America, you get this sort of a Steve who is functioning in a post 9/11 world for the first time, and you have this sort of redefinition of who he is, and he's sort of questioning what the the quote unquote dream is, and I think that that's something to kind of look at when you're trying to process this story. I think we're going to see a Steve, and obviously I don't know, I'm just guessing here, but I'm thinking we're going to see a Steve that's going to have to deal with some sort of reprioritizing of his own image. Like, he's having a little bit of a brand crisis here. Like, his identity has been co-opted in such a way that he's going to have to do a lot of work in, either finding himself again or finding a way that he can get people to trust him again, or even deciding if that matters. Like, I think that also historically we've seen Steve give it up in a sense that he realizes that he has more important things to do, more interpersonal things that he needs to do to situate himself in a position where he feels like he can take that responsibility again. So I think that that's also on the table too.
So we have got previews of the forthcoming issue of Secret Empire number 9. Alanna, tell us what we can know about these. I know they're going to come up just nice and shortly. So what are we seeing here?
So we are seeing more Steve and Kovac.
Yeah.
So this interaction is going to be a very large part of the wrap up of Secret Empire and how things resolve and how things come together. Like, Kovac has always been at the center of this, even though we haven't seen much of her throughout the event because we broke her at the beginning of it. But this is the point where, we start to see these people, like both of them are in a very dark place that they can't get out of, are going to start to claw their way back. So that's what this is.
Well, all right. We do have another preview here. Even more.
Yes.
That's Baron Zemo. I know that fella. That's a lot of gun. What else are we looking at here?
I believe this is so this is the culmination of the 2 attacks in Cap 25. So we are going to see.
Look at that friendship.
There's such good buzz. So we are going to see the culmination of Wakanda being defeated and New Tian being kind of forced to come to the table and discuss terms.
Wow.
And in the meantime, all of the forces are converging on the capital while he's trying to do all this diplomacy stuff. So it's going to be a fun combo of a lot of punching and a lot of trying to get people to surrender to him unconditionally. So he's a very busy man in this issue.
Will Cap and Zemo remain friends after this is all over? Because that's all I want to know. It's a budding romance. It's a beautiful bromance.
That's a complicated question.
Ooh. I was kind of joking, but
here's the thing that I love about just Zemo and Cap's friendship in general is that if Bucky had a Red Skull of his own, it would be Zemo.
Yeah.
Zemo has bad blood with Bucky from the beginning. He killed him. He's you remember back to
twice in the past few months.
He's killed him 2 times. He's killed him 3 times actually. But
wow.
He's really not a good relationship.
At the Winter Soldier arc, towards the end of Bucky's tenure as Cap, Zemo is the one responsible for kind of outing him as the Winter Soldier too. Zemo hates him.
Yeah, they're not
completely hates him. And so when you have Zemo stepping into the role as Steve's best friend, that's really rough. That's really
but
rough,
also
man.
from Zemo's perspective, Bucky did steal his Thunderbolts. So
Yep.
Yes.
Well, all this and more coming up in issues 9 and 10, and then Omega of Secret Empire. So I want to thank all of our guests for coming on. Meg, thank you so much for joining us. Mike, Alanna, this has been so much fun. Thank you all very much for watching. Secret Empire is on shelves now. My name is Walt Hickey. This has been Inside Marvel with ABC News Digital. Thank you for watching.